Welcome to the Authentic Man podcast. I am your host, David Chambers. This is a podcast for men who want more and less from life. More deep connection, more emotional intelligence, more self-awareness, and more great sex. And less heartache, less conflict, less overthinking, and less stress. Creating dating lives, sex lives, and relationships that are incredible and authentic. My deepest goal is that you, the listener, can take away what you hear in this podcast and apply it to your life so that you can experience greater happiness, transformational growth, deeper relationships, and profound sexual intimacy. I believe that as men, we are capable of so much more depth than we are shown or led to believe. So join me as we get deep into this. Hello. Welcome to the Authentic Man podcast. I'm your host, David Chambers. If you're new here, this is a podcast aimed at men, but incredibly useful to women. It's a podcast to help men create deeper, more loving relationships, more exciting and enjoyable dating lives, and also have the kind of deeply connected sex lives they really long for, they really dream of having. And each week I bring on different guests to talk about various topics, whatever kind of feels good. Anyone I notice on social media, anyone whose books have really inspired me, I try and get them in to talk about their area of expertise. And this week is no different. I've got a wonderful guest called Roy Graff, and he is a coach and mentor to people who are navigating polyamory. He really helps singles and couples navigate polyamory. There's a lot to consider as you're going to start to learn inside the episode. And he's a wonderful man. Really enjoy talking to him. A real wealth of knowledge and calmness. And as you're going to come to see, just because he is polyamorous himself and he coaches polyamorous people, I know from speaking to him as well and hearing the episode that he also works with monogamous people, both couples and singles, to help them bring more awareness into their relationships. So there was a lot of synergy between the two of us and how we saw how relationships can be managed and how we can have more fruitful relationships. So this episode is full of so much gold. If you are always been in monogamous relationships and you're interested in polyamory, this is an amazing episode to listen to, because you're going to hear how around the structures and learnings and even how we can use polyamory as a way for us to grow as human beings on our evolution, as our transformation even. And if you are, monogamous and you're happily monogamous, what you're going to really learn from the episode is how you can bring in so many of the concepts and ideas that Roy practices, as well as his clients, as well as a lot of practices I use in my own relationship, to bring more consciousness, more clarity, more responsibility, and to deal with conflict really powerfully inside your relationship. Really it's taking self-responsibility for what you need, what you desire inside your relationship, and empowering your partner to do the same. There's a lot of conversation around that between the two of us in this episode. And this episode we've had a few questions and it just kind of danced and moved and changed. There's just so much gold in this one. A really beautiful one to listen back to. A lot of, I'd almost recommend, if you've got a partner and you're listening to this, or partners, sit down and listen to this all together. It's a really great episode for that sort of thing, right? To digest and talk about the topics as they come up. But as usual, for me, what have I got coming up? I've got quite a few events coming up and I'm going to list them all out. I'll probably put them in the show notes. I've got events around, I'm running with my partner also, some Tantra events. We've got a new one we've just put up around Tantric foreplay, which is going to be really, really beautiful. We've been writing that recently. We've got Tantric massage, as well as I've got events that I hold for just men. So if you're a man and you want to be inside an event with other men who are looking to move forward in their lives, who want to expand and be better men, I've got numerous events coming up around dating, being authentic, stuff around sexual performance, as well as an event around foreplay for men. So I've got all those things coming up. So just check out the show notes for that down there. And obviously, if you're interested in coaching or working with me on a one-to-one basis, feel free to drop me an email. The details in the show notes, but it's hello@theauthenticman.net. And also you can hit me up on Instagram, and that's @theauthenticman_. But yeah, I'm not going to delay you anymore for this episode, because this is a really great one. So without further ado, I'll let you jump into the latest episode of the Authentic Man podcast. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this episode of the Authentic Man podcast. And this is going to be a really interesting episode because it's a topic that's kind of close to my heart, and a topic that I don't see talked about in a way that gives people real insight and understanding enough. And this is when we talk about open relating and polyamory. And I've got a wonderful guest with me today, a man whose work I've been following for quite a while on Instagram. And I just love the openness and honesty and his willingness to kind of talk about parts of relationships that, people often bury and hide, things like jealousy, desire for other people, these sorts of things that we often think we can't even feel. But he talks so openly and in such a constructive way that allows people to have real insight and understanding, right? I really love. And it is Roy Graff. He is a relationship coach, and he specializes in helping people who are interested and are going in a journey of open relating and polyamory. Hi, Roy.
Hi, David. It's great to be here.
Thank you. Thanks for being here. I've been feeling really excited about this episode today because in myself, I've kind of delved into the world of open relating a number of years ago for a few years, and found that it wasn't always easy, because where do you go? Who do you speak to? We're all so used to this monogamous structure that's placed on top of us. So it's really beautiful to have an expert here to speak to today.
Thanks. I definitely am not an expert. I don't think anybody can be an expert in this, because this polyamory can be practiced and experienced in so many different ways. And I guess I'm fortunate or not to have experienced and lived through lots of different relationship dynamics, and I've made a lot of mistakes in my past that taught me what I should and shouldn't do, like in the future, right? So I learned from those mistakes, and I'm trying to make sure that other people that are just starting on this journey or expanding from where they were don't have to repeat those kind of painful mistakes. I wish I had someone that can mentor me and advise me when I was starting out. My life was very different, but on the other hand, you learn so much through mistakes. You learn so much through painful experiences. And I love embracing that and just turning that into a lesson and into an insight. But and now through my work, of course, I come across so many people with very different backgrounds and experiences and different ways of approaching non-monogamy and polyamory. And ultimately that gives me some insight about, I guess, what are general challenges and concerns people have, and also all the different, a wider range of dynamics that can be covered under that umbrella of non-monogamy.
And it's a very wide umbrella, isn't it? It's a very wide umbrella, and I think it's a bit like the term kind of queer now. It encompasses so much that often people, they project their own assumptions and beliefs about what it is when there's a wide umbrella, I find.
Certainly. And it very much depends on your culture, your upbringing, your environment, your schooling, the peer pressure that you grow up with and that you experience around you, even as an adult. All those will impact on the projections we make on those terms, right? And ultimately, one of the, I think, important lessons just in authentic relating generally is to become aware of what is a projection and what is an actual observation of a reality or, of something objective. So that is very, very much part of the process also in coaching, to separate out projections and belief systems and established mindsets that were put on us by other people that we didn't create for ourselves.
Mm-hmm. It's really important work for us to do. And I like to start all my episodes with asking a question to my guests. And I think you've answered a little bit, is how did you come to do this work? How did you come to be a relationship coach that specializes in helping people with open relating and polyamory?
Uh, I mean, I guess everybody comes into coaching through some kind of very interesting route on the whole. I think that's one of these professions that always come with the background, kind of with the backstory. For me, it's something that I've really started doing seriously through the lockdown. So last year in the pandemic. I have already been running workshops and facilitating sharing circles around polyamory, jealousy, and things like that for a number of years. But I had a full-time job. I had a day job in marketing. It was tourism marketing. So COVID, right away in the beginning, killed off our whole industry.
Mm.
And I was stuck in furlough with very much a lot of time and nowhere to go, nowhere to travel, no one to see, just the computer, right? And the internet and my partners, fortunately. And I decided to start researching things that I can do, that I can learn. I looked at online courses in different modalities. I signed up to study nonviolent communication and VC. I studied radical honesty. I took psychotherapy, introductory courses, and everything just resonated so much with me and helped me connect all those things I was doing as a hobby before, connect to my own lived experience of polyamory, and also like realize that I've been unintentionally working with my friends, when people coming to me and asking for advice or want to share their issues, and I've been helping them reflect on their lives, and I've realized there's something there, right? So I started psychotherapy training, which I'm in the middle of, and I launched the coaching practice as a way of, as I mentioned before, wanting to help people avoid really painful mistakes, but also learning what it is that they really need and want out of relationships, out of themselves, to figure out, is non-monogamy or polyamory the right thing for me? What kind of dynamic might work better? And how do we resolve conflicts in a different way to how you might resolve it in monogamy? I think that now, communication, open, honest communication is important in every relationship. And I know you also, very much advocate for it. The thing is that with monogamy, oftentimes it's kind of easy to sweep things under the rug, to avoid dealing with certain topics, to just kind of slide certain things over and hope they'll not come back and just ignore the issues. With polyamory, if you're managing multiple relationships openly and honestly, then it's impossible to do that. Just you would be called out on any unethical or kind of secret behavior, and it's just not possible to pretend that you're not who you really are with multiple people and multiple relationships going on at the same time.
Mm. Mm. Yeah. It's this thing where, we've really got used to being in monogamous relationships where it's like, oh, we don't talk about that. Like that upsets my partner or that upsets me. So we don't talk about that. Like, yeah. Okay. And it's very normal. It's very accepted way of being. People, walk around and they're like, oh yeah, why would you talk about something that upsets the two of you? And, it's inside of that tucking under the rug constantly, Mm-hmm. And I imagine that if people try and do that inside of, open relating and polyamory, like you've got to manage multiple rugs to be tucking things under, and it takes a lot of energy to do, right?
It takes a lot of energy. It's exhausting. And, I can give you an example from my own history. My first fully polyamorous primary relationship, meaning that I was living with the partner and we were cohabitating, we were running a flat together. We're quite compatible living together. So that part was very easy, but managing the other relationships became more and more difficult the closer we got to each other and the more of a hierarchy it became. And a lot of it had to do with me being inexperienced and not realizing that I need to place some boundaries around managing these other relationships separate to my lived-in relationship. And on her side, there was a lot of need for control to feel more stable and more secure. So controlling what I was doing, to not be ever surprised about something, to prepare and process things in her own time, which was different to how I process things. People are individuals, are very different. That is something that, again, in monogamy, we often forget. We get and become enmeshed with a partner. There's codependency, which is not always easy to recognize when it's just the two people. But if you are managing multiple relationships, then first of all, you can't always be there for your partner when they want you to be there for them. So there's a lot of self-regulation, self-soothing that has to be done, or relying on other friends and other partners and a wider network of support, or emotional support. I think, especially for men, and I imagine you see that a lot, men don't grow up as children learning that it's okay to seek emotional support from multiple people.
Yes.
It's, they have their mother, then they have their girlfriend, and then they have their wife, and like they basically expect that their single partner will provide all the emotional support and the physical support and everything, right? And that's a lot to put on one person.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I've learned that you can't both have this kind of primary relationship with this expectation that you're providing everything for each other, but also try to safeguard, kind of to basically have other relationships that are autonomous and can run alongside if you're not very good with your own personal boundaries. And so that created a huge conflict for us in managing it. And we tried lots of different things to resolve conflict, to change the boundaries in the agreements, and we even put some rules in place, which I generally avoid this idea of rules, but at the time we didn't really realize that that's not a good thing. We can come back to it maybe later, but essentially we tried everything that we thought of, but it wasn't working, because ultimately, even though we were both wanted polyamory, we had different values. And if I had to go back to that again, what I would advise my younger self is, first of all, figure out what it is that you really need, who you are, what are your boundaries. And then you can say to your partner, that's how I present in a relationship. That's how much I can kind of give in terms of energy, time, and emotion support. But I also need to carve out that for myself, right? So, and maybe that there is that imperative there to really look after yourself.
Yeah, the imperative there to look after self is like being self-responsible for your needs, your boundaries, your desires, and also, as you said before, like self-soothing and managing your own relationships.
Very much so. And we don't learn that very, well, some people do if they're lucky, but generally we don't learn how to do that for ourselves. A lot of family relationships, with your parents are kind of codependent. And I believe that the role of parents, while it's very much to provide a safe, loving environment, it's also to help the child develop healthy boundaries and become more self-sufficient in many ways. But many times, because of our parents' own childhood traumas and childhood wounding, they don't provide that. They don't know how to, and they're also looking for the child to fill in certain voids and emotional gaps that they have, thus making the child feel like they're responsible for emotional co-regulation, which is not really their role. So that brings up a lot of people who are then looking to replace that dynamic in a relationship.
Yeah.
And not taking the time to, I guess, do the self-work to come up to this notion of, I am responsible for my own happiness, for my own needs, and other people can add to it, but it's not their responsibility to make me happy or to look after me.
Yeah. And that's quite a radical idea for a lot of people, them being responsible for their own emotions and regulating their own emotions and what they want and what they need, because like you said, we're so conditioned into that we should be codependent on other people from our parents. And then on top of that, society kind of gives us this message that if things are happening to you, it's not necessarily your fault, it's other people. You can blame outwardly. And we get this idea around, especially monogamous relationships, right? That, your partner shouldn't make you jealous, for instance, or your partner shouldn't do things that upset you. And if they do, then they're a bad partner.
Yeah. So the whole, there's a lot of misconception, I think, around the setting expectations in relationships. So that expectation of should is really giving up your self-responsibility. And like it's something that we see constantly in books and in TV and in movies, is how obsession and possessiveness is portrayed as love.
Yeah.
How jealousy is portrayed as like caring too much and that kind of thing. And that's supposedly a good thing. In fact, it's toxic behavior, and it comes from a deep-seated insecurities and fears that you have in yourself. And now, while I have never personally been a very jealous person, I have experienced pangs of jealousy. And normally, when I experience that, I know it's a self insecurity. It's something that I have a fear. So the jealousy is essentially a spotlight that tells me, look there, look at what's going on. What is the fear? What are you worried about? You know, what are you insecure about? And then I can work on that. Now, when we are interdependent with a partner rather than codependent, we can share our fears without making it their responsibility. We may even ask for certain validation support. Like I have a fear that if, for example, my partner is going on a date with somebody and I feel that kind of jealousy, I realize it's because I have some fear of abandonment, for example, right? You know, and I'm worried that that person is going to sweep them off their feet and they will not want to be with me anymore. And that can be a valid, legitimate fear because of an attachment style I have with my parents, or because I had a partner in the past that dumped me for someone else, right? There's very valid reasons why these feelings exist. And I'm not like wrong or bad for feeling it.
Mm.
But my responsibility is not to make that my partner's responsibility or my partner's role to help me not feel it. It's not her job, right? If we're agreeing that we are opening up a relationship or that we are already, we're dating but seeing other people, she hasn't done anything wrong by going on a date. She hasn't done anything wrong by going on a date with somebody who I might perceive as more successful or good looking or have a better body. Like, good for her, right?
Yeah.
So it's all about my own issues. And I can ask her, I can say, I'm feeling this insecurity. I'd like some validation. I'd like to tell me that you love me, that you're going to come back and be with me, that we're going to do something fun together. I can ask for those things, and most empathetic partners will be happy to offer that kind of affirmation. What I don't want to do is say, don't go out, cancel the date and stay with me.
Mm.
But that won't fix any problem. That won't heal the feelings I have. It'll just have them under the rug again until the next time.
Yeah. And I think this is the thing is that we're not taught to ask for that, to ask for the, what am I feeling? First of all, we're not even really taught how to recognize what we're feeling most of the time, right? Especially, I do a lot of work with men, is when you ask them like, why are you feeling the certain way you're feeling, or what are you feeling? Often there's a very limited number of feelings that one can bring to mind. So to even know that I'm feeling jealous, and like you said, it's like, it's real work, or I don't always like to call it work, because when we say work, it implies that it's hard, it's difficult, or that, we have a relationship to work. It's something we go and do to growth. Let's call it growth, right? The relationship you have to growth is like, when we can look at ourselves and go, I'm feeling jealous. This is because I have an insecurity that I can be abandoned, like you said, or I'm not good enough, for instance. And then we can ask ourselves, like, what do I need in this moment? What do I need from my partner? And our ego will say to us, you don't want them to go on another date, right? And we have to kind of get past that one and go, okay, well, that's not really going to be the answer. What do we really need? I need to feel like I'm loved and cared for by that person. And to go and ask that person, like, hey, this is what I'm feeling, which is very vulnerable. What I need in this moment is I need to know that I'm loved, cared for, and you're going to come back to me. Is, that's a radical step for a lot of people, right? A very radical step.
Especially men. I think, men are kind of, a lot of men are brought up in this stoic mindset of asking for something that you need is appears to be a weakness.
Yeah.
Right. But they take self-sufficiency maybe in the wrong way, right? The self-sufficiency is like, I have no emotions. I don't need any emotional support because I'm very strong. Well, actually, being strong means showing vulnerability and being able to then carry that, to kind of hold that for yourself and for others. And if you can't express your own vulnerability, how can you hold other people's vulnerability? I think that these things go together. So to be a compassionate, empathetic person, you first have to be compassionate, empathetic to yourself.
Yes. I couldn't agree more. I couldn't agree more with that. It's like our ability to be compassionate, empathetic, and I think even intimate with other people is really founded on our ability to do that for ourselves. Like our ability to go, oh, I'm feeling a certain way. Oh, I have certain needs. I have certain desires, and just acknowledge them as being valid and okay.
Yeah. So for this reason, I really work with people, and I encourage my partners, myself, people I work with, to figure out how they can express their authentic desires.
Mm.
And in relationships, I think a lot of times we meet somebody, there's a lot of excitement in the beginning. We want to present our best self, our best side to them. And we want them to fall in love with the image that we're projecting, that is our imagined best self, right? And if we're emotionally quite astute, we'll also sense what it is that they're looking for and try and present that side. But it's not sustainable, because you can't sustain something that you're not clearly authentically are for a long time. So after the initial kind of new relationship energy exciting stage, you'll revert back to who you are, and your partner will see you for who you are. So why not present that from the beginning? Why wait until they realize that and then maybe realize you're not compatible? So first of all is expression of self authentically right from the beginning. I think it's really important. The other thing is that if you know that you're maybe non-monogamous, that you have an interest or a desire to explore an open relationship, don't wait until your partner falls in love with you and is committed to you before you bring it up. Yeah, that is tantamount to manipulation, even if you're not intentionally doing it. Even if you think, well, once we're like stable and we trust each other, then I can open it up. No, because again, you're not presenting exactly who you are, and they will, once they realize it, they can be hurt, and there will be valid to be hurt. So it's something that needs to be brought up really early on in the connection. And maybe they're not into it, and then you'll know, and maybe you'll say to yourself, well, this person I care so much about, and they really are high potential, that I'm okay with not. And maybe down the line they will change their mind, but I shouldn't like bank or expect it. I should take them at their word that they're not willing to be in an open relationship. And more, especially in big cities, especially with online, access to dating and everything, you can find people who are also interested in non-monogamy and polyamory. Yeah. And it's much better to find someone who has some experience and already know exactly that this is who they are, than someone who's never heard of it before, and may only be willing to do it just to be with you because they really like it, like you, and are willing to kind of sacrifice that part just to please you. I don't want anybody to do that for me, for sure.
Yeah.
I think that it's very much a natural desire thing to want the person to be fully happy and fulfilled while they're with me, right? It is, and it's when people are expecting their partner to give up their own desires and ambitions and dreams and their self just to please them. I mean, that's narcissistic disorder essentially, and people who have that in them within the polyamory kind of world often approach polyamory in a very unhealthy, toxic way. And often that kind of comes, is manifested, for example, with saying, I want to date multiple people, but my partners can only date me. Or even, I think, worse from a kind of homophobia perspective and transphobia perspective is saying, well, let's say for a man to say, my partners, they can have sex or date women, but not other men, because I should be the only man in their life. Which, has lots of ethical issues involved with that, but ultimately it boils down to you still wanting to control, other people, and you need that element of control because of your own internalized insecurity. So you're looking for this external validation.
Yeah.
And there are people in the non-monogamous universe that do that, and it's sometimes can really give a bad name to polyamory. And I met, often it's women that I meet that said, yeah, I met this guy and he said he's on board with polyamory, but then we started dating and he started making my life difficult to date other guys, and but while he was dating other women, and you're just like act in a jealous rage and those kind of things. And then that's why I don't want to do polyamory. And I just say, well, that's not polyamory. That's just toxic behavior. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's interesting you say that, right? Because I feel like polyamory's got this really bad reputation. And I'm going to say it's because of men, to be honest, right? It's inside of when I was, you know, when I'm now in my 30s now, when I was maybe 10 years or so ago, you would meet someone, you'd be like, oh, I don't want anything serious. I want to be open, right? And it was used as this way by a lot of men. And I'm going to say it's men because I know guys that did it. I was definitely one of them, put my hand up to that. It was used it as a way to avoid commitment. So very much in the wider society, you know, there's this idea that if you want to be open relating or you want to be polyamorous, that really what it is that you don't want commitment, you know, which, you know, those two things don't necessarily go together. So I guess I ask is there any other kind of big misconceptions that people have around open relating and polyamory?
Yeah, I mean, there are lots of misconceptions because it's still very much a small minority of people who openly practice it. And I think most people who are practicing it are doing it in secret. So there's just a small minority that are public. Now, it's very similar, I guess, to how queer people had to hide who they were 30, 40 years ago. And now it's more accepted, and people even coming out as teenagers can expect to be accepted, right? That's not yet happening with polyamory. So partly is maybe the confusion of terms, because people have been in open relationships for a long time. People have been swingers for many, many years, right? And it tends to be something that's like unsaid, similarly to how people who have lovers and while they're married, you know, and have infidelity, it's like a lot of it is an open secret, and people just kind of prefer to like let it happen without talking about it. So non-monogamy has existed for millennia.
Yeah.
The difference is that now people are willing to be open, ethical about that, and say out loud, you know, this is part of who I am. I am someone who can love more than 1% of the time, who show care and affection and commitment to more than 1% of the time. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just as valid as any other choice in your relationship dynamic. I want to maybe take a step back and just in terms of definitions to clarify some of these words, because I think the misconceptions are also about definitions. Polyamory means many loves, multiples, and amory, love. And it's really about your capacity to experience multiple loves and to also accept that this is how other people love, right? So I can be polyamorous as my basic kind of love style, but choose to be in a monogamous relationship because of circumstances. So you can do that. Yeah. I can also be monoamorous, as in like for me, when I love one person, no, I don't care about anybody else. I just focus on that and that. That's like monoamory. But I can have a partner who is polyamorous and practicing non-monogamy or multigamy because this is who they are. And I know who I am, so I only am dating them, but I accept that they are different, and that's okay. They give me what I need in my relationship. Whatever they do with the rest of the time, it's their decision. It's their life. So you can have these different models, and people often interchange non-monogamy and polyamory and being open, but they are quite different. The idea of dating around and dating even now, which I think happens a lot with young people, saying, yeah, I'm dating multiple people at the same time, and because I'm not looking to settle down right now. At some point, maybe in their mind, they will meet one person who they would want to settle down with. But what if they meet two people who they like very much and who are fine with each other, right? Then why do you need to then choose? And I think that the prime motivation for me in polyamory is I don't have to choose. Clearly, there are limits of time, energy, right, attention, but there isn't a limit in how many I can love. So I may not only be able to have 2-3 relationships where I see somebody every week, provided that we don't live together and we can manage our calendar. But I can have more people that are in my life that I love, but I don't see regularly. Maybe they live in a different town. Maybe they're married. Maybe they're very busy with work and they're career focused. So maybe I see them once a month. The duration and the time I see them has nothing to do with the intensity of the emotion necessarily. So this idea that polyamory is, or non-monogamy is basically people just want to have a lot of sex with, and have a lot of variety of sexual partners. That's a misconception. But for some people, that is the case. And I put my hands up. I love sexual variety. Yeah. I love the fact that I can also have new sexual connections, and I can, while having existing ones that I invest in and that we get to know each other and develop something over the long term, but I also have these exciting new experiences, right? So I'm not ashamed of enjoying sex. And, if people are healthily engaging in casual sex with multiple partners and everybody knows about it and everybody's on board with it, then it doesn't hurt anybody. But polyamory is so much more about an emotional connection with people. And and when people say, "Oh, it's all about the sex," they're also erasing the experience of asexual people or gray sexual people or demisexual people, right? And there are many people who are polyamorous who are demi or asexual, and their polyamory is very valid even if they have very little sex or none at all.
Yeah.
So that's like one misconception I can point to. I think there's also maybe in an older generation this idea of like, yeah, it's a phase. Once you kind of get out of your system, you'll eventually meet the one, right? So there is this misconception of there is that one out there, right? And ultimately, I think that there's enough evidence to show that that's plainly wrong. But also, there is a one. There could be one for me right now, for who I am right now. But in a year's time, in 2 years' time, I'm going to be different. And this person that I'm with may change in different ways. So maybe they're right for me right now, they're the one, but they're not the one for later necessarily. Now, if we have a conscious, open, honest relationship with all of authenticity there, then we can support each other's growth and allow that individual growth while also maintaining the intimacy of the relationship. With monogamy, that's difficult because we have this expectation that we want to keep the partner the way we found them, kind of thing. And we're kind of holding on to that. So years down the line, with many things change, we kind of remember if on the beginning and think, well, why couldn't you just be like that? It's like, well, it's not up to you. Like the person is individual, and they have their own needs, their own journey. So whether it's monogamy or multigamy, we are all on our individual journey, and people come along for the ride, and we can support each other. It's just that with multiple relationships, there's probably more imperative to focus on the individual journey and be much more aware of it, while also supporting my partners. I love watching my partner's journey over the last few years. And part of it is our connection. Part of it is her own work journey and social journey and other people she's dated, right? And I get to watch all that and just see the growth. And she sees mine, right? And I think that's beautiful.
Yeah. What I'm hearing is like the last bit you said there was this, like, as a relationship structure, polyamory supports the growth of individuals, right? Whereas the traditional monogamy structure really, as you said, this time warp attempt to keep people as they were. And even you see people when they break up and they use the reason of like, oh, they've changed, and I hear this from people, and I always kind of think, well, yeah, of course. What do you expect someone to do? Stay exactly the same as they were when they were 21 years old? We're human beings. We grow over time and we shift and we change. And I think the kind of traditional way that we do monogamy as well is almost we try and shackle someone into not growing in any ways that we don't want them to. And that's obviously inside of like a quite kind of codependent, controlling relationship. But it sounds like from what you're saying that really inside of polyamory, it's like an invitation for growth.
Very much so. Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head there. One of the, for me, a great benefits is that I learned from every relationship I'm in. And that was true when I was monogamous. And I was monogamous for a big chunk of my life. So, and I learned, and I didn't always implement all the lessons I learned in the next relationship. Sometimes I had to make the same mistake a number of times to realize it's a pattern, and then myself and do that growth. But I still learn, and whoever gets me now in a relationship will benefit from all of that experience in the past.
Yeah.
Right. Starting from like remembering to leave the toilet seat down, to being a better cook and a better host and a better lover. It's experience. So I get to do that and learn and grow in a way faster because I'm in multiple relationships. And that's a benefit of polyamory. It's almost like an accelerated growth curve, because every relationship is going to demand different skill sets from you, different communication styles, right? Your empathy is going to be tested in different ways. And all of that is an element of your own personal growth.
Yeah. It's interesting because I'm part of a tantra community in London. I go to a tantra school, when we had one of our classes was around, polyamory. And the way it was put, it's like a fast track to self-learning, because you're constantly put in front of things that trigger you, that you find difficult, that you feel uncomfortable. And it's much harder to, tuck them under the rug, as we said, right? It's like you have to kind of face these things instead of going, well, I don't want to deal with that, so I don't want you to talk about that anymore. And we're going to put that in the back of the backpack, and we're not going to talk about it anymore, because of the multiple relationships, as we said. It's like you have to be able to be nimble and agile in your being as well. It must create a personal agility in terms of communication, because you will have to switch between, because we all communicate differently naturally, right? But it means that you have to learn to communicate slightly differently with different people, but you bring that into your being as it kind of expands your ability to communicate.
Yeah. And I'm actually wondering, as you're saying that maybe is also one of the skills that helped me in my coaching. When I meet different people, one after the other, and they're very different personalities, but I need to very quickly connect with them and have empathy to their own specific struggles and challenges, and see things from their own perspective. So that's something that, I definitely feel like polyamory is helping me with. I do want to point out that it's not a magic word. Not like, okay, I choose polyamory, I'm going to all of a sudden have this magic growth curve. It's all about what you're committing to put into it. And as you mentioned before, getting to that trigger point and saying, I'm not going to push back. I'm not going to try to avoid and ignore it. I'm going to go through this. And so and that doesn't mean forcing other people to accept whatever it is that you're going through in the moment. So what I mean by that is, yes, we want to always be very honest with our partners and always talk about issues and not hide them under the rug and not kind of discard them. But we also need to make sure that our partner is in the right state of mind, the right place themselves to talk to us about it, to process this, right? And not force them to do it when they're not ready.
Yeah.
People are going through their own struggles. And that's one thing that we have to remember. I'm going through shit, but my partners might be going through their own shit. Yeah. And they might want to help me with mine, but they may not be ready right now. So polyamory has this, I guess, side benefit of saying, well, if I can maybe go to somebody else, but you don't have to have partners for that. You can have friends, you can have family, right? You can have a therapist. There are other ways to do it. It's all about having a good support network. Polyamory maybe makes it a little bit easier because there's love connection, so there's this desire to support. But I think that even in monogamy, consciously creating more of a support network with friendships is really important.
Yeah.
As well.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm hoping to achieve is when I'm speaking to also monogamous people is bring to them and help them figure out that some of the skills of polyamory definitely apply to them as well.
Yeah. And it's interesting you say about communication, right? Because it's something that I really learned inside of I spent probably 3 years in open relating and being really open and honest and ethical and having agreements about how to discuss things, even conversation structures. So I need to introduce this conversation and having this, right? And what it really taught me was to expand my ability to be with someone else's emotion, whether that's upset, anger, or whatever comes back. Because as a young man, that was probably my deficiency, I would say, is that I didn't believe I had emotional capacity. And it's important for me to say I didn't believe, because my emotional capacity is huge as a human being, but whatever I believe it to be is its limit. And I learned to be able to be with a lot more emotion for my partner than I thought that I was capable of doing. And it's added so much to not just our relationship, but also, as you said, my coaching. It's like, you know, I regularly will sit with clients and I just sit and listen, and I can sit there, listen, I can feel what they're feeling. I don't feel uncomfortable, and they kind of empty. And I hadn't really put those two things together until you said it. And I was like, wow, yeah, that's really improved my ability just to listen without taking things personally. Be able to just listen to what they're saying, what their emotions are, what they're feeling, what's going on inside of their mind, and hear all that without that me kind of projecting all that onto myself and going, this is all my fault.
Yeah, it's super important. And it's something that, again, it's a practice. So it's almost like a muscle you need to exercise in the relationships. And it's helpful often to do that with things that are not massive problems, but even smaller things, just to practice it. And what I noticed also is that when there is a conflict and we address it head on and we actually sit down with a partner and work through it, there's a great opportunity there for us to get closer and to build more intimacy and more trust through resolving that conflict. We see that we've done it together, and that gives us that trust in each other so we can get through it. Whereas if a conflict is just throwing accusations at each other, then even if we at some point run out of energy and make up, we didn't get any closer. And so there's like one example recently which is specific to me and my partner, but I think it kind of illustrates that, is where we met up after not seeing each other for a while, and I wanted to kind of reconnect with her, and we started kind of kissing and getting and being more intimate, but I wasn't really in the mind. I mean, I think I still needed more reconnection time to kind of have sex, and she kind of felt like it was getting there and focused all of her energy on wanting to be sexual. And I kind of changed the topic about something else, and that kind of killed the mood, and she felt rejected. And we were just like laying there, and because she knows she can talk to me about anything, she basically brought it up saying, I feel like you've kind of changed the mood to like not have sex. And I was like really kind of hoping to do that. So I kind of feel unwanted and rejected, and I don't know when we're going to have time again. And I feel like now you're not going to want me because you've got other partners. Some anxieties are coming up, and, you know, and again, we know each other enough to understand and to hold that space for each other. And I'm not taking it on board as something, as an accusation. It's just, this is her feelings and they're valid. But I just thought about it for a while, and I said, I hear you. I understand. This is how you feel. And then I just said, but what you're saying, I mean, I understand this is your feeling, but what you're saying is bullshit. And then we have lots of time. We have this evening, we have tomorrow, we have other times, you know, we're together for many years, like nothing's going to change. And this is just a fear kind of coming up. And she needed to hear it in that way, because it showed her the kind of absurdity of her thoughts taking over. And that kind of really kind of broke the moment to a way where we got much more intimacy and got into why she's feeling that, why her fears are there, and recognizing that, yes, we have more time. And then we just somehow became so much more intimate that sex kind of happened totally organically, and it was an amazing experience right there, like a few minutes later, right? And it also helped us get emotionally closer together to go through that. So I definitely want, encourage people to not avoid conflict, but actually look at the conflict as an opportunity to go deeper with someone. Yeah. But again, provided that they are ready to do that. If they're not ready to address it, they're not going to be in a place where they can respond. Right? Being radically honest requires willing participants in the process. And sometimes it means let's schedule a time to do that.
Yeah.
Now it's not a good time. Let's talk about it when we're both ready. Pushing somebody to insisting that somebody responds right now to your needs for closure, for conflict resolution, doesn't work. I don't believe it works. So we both have to be present for that, fully present.
Yeah. No, I really agree with what you said about demanding that someone must deal with what's coming up in this moment. It's something I see for myself in the relationships with my clients. Is people don't always realize that they can have time, that they can have time to talk about something later, instead of having to always talk about it in the moment when it comes up. You can say, no, I don't have the ability to give this the attention it needs, and we can talk about it at a later date when our emotions are both calmed down, we regulate a little bit, and we can come at it from a place of love and compassion for each other.
Yeah, and I don't know how many clients you get with neurodiversity, right? But if people have ADHD or on the autistic spectrum in some place, then their abilities to process things is going to be different. The pace, the way that they think about things and come to realize what maybe neurotypical people realize in a different way, it's going to be different. And sometimes you put someone with neurodiversity under a lot of pressure, then some of their executive functions might shut down because they just get into this danger, kind of body danger mode. And that's all that they can think of is basically shutting down to protect themselves. Mm-hmm. So I think it's really important. And a lot of people are going through life undiagnosed with a neurodiversity. And they've learned to mask and pretend that they're like others, even though inside they're not.
Yeah.
So a lot of time what I see in relationships is not an understanding that the people just process conflict and anger very, very differently. And knowing for yourself what you need to regulate the body first, to process the thoughts, and then respond, is important. I mean, your partner can't necessarily be expected to know what you need, right? So it is important that you can express that I need more time, or I need to go for a walk, or I need you to hold me so I feel more safe, so I can then address this. This is what I can express for myself. As a partner, if I can see somebody is struggling with responding, I need to remind myself they not necessarily are someone that will process it the way I do. I can't, just because I am handling it in a way doesn't mean anything about the way they handle it. And I should not expect that from them. So if I can see that they're struggling, I can also ask them, what do you need? And let them figure it out.
That's a great point. I have a question actually in terms of this. What happens if you have two partners and in the moment they both have needs, but their needs are two opposite things? So maybe one partner is like, I need to be held, and the other partner is like, I need space. How do two people go about bringing harmony in that situation?
Well, are you asking about a situation where there is a relationship of three people together or separate relationships?
Just a relationship of two people.
Okay. So, because obviously there's polyamorous relationships that are polycules, well, 3, 4, 5 people that are kind of all together. But if you're talking about parallel relationships, and the people obviously are going to have different characteristics, different personalities, different needs, and different responses. Again, that's part of the growth part is learning to be different with different people. So the way I communicate is going to be different with each one. And that sometimes in the beginning, making the switch was harder, and then it got easier with time. And if there is a demand or expectation of my time, and I feel like it's being stressed too much, I need to be able to say also, you know what, I need time for myself, or I can't now be here for you, right? And I go back to what we discussed earlier. It's important that as a polyamorous person, I have other support resources that are not my partners, because it's also possible that what I need right now, there's a partner that I know will understand that part more than another, and she's on a date, right? That's possible. But again, equally, she should be playing volleyball or swimming or at work. Right? The fact that she's on a date doesn't really matter. Now, if it's a critical emergency, even if she's on a date, I can call her because she's my partner, and that's, we look out for each other, right? But I will try to avoid it if I know that I can, and I will look for a friend to work with me through that, or I will regulate as much as I can and wait until there's time. So I expect my partners to do the same, and they do. Right? So they have other friends, they have another support network, they have their flatmates, whatever it is. And yeah, sometimes it sucks, but sometimes also in monogamy, your partner is on a business trip and there's nobody to hold you when you're sad. That's life, right?
Yeah. It goes back to what we were saying before, is creating I don't want to call them, well, I'm call them strategies, right, for our own regulation of ourselves, right, of not having this codependency and needing someone else to always be there to regulate us.
Yeah, I would imagine, and I think that for some people where that kind of need for external validation and regulation, where they can't really do it themselves, for them, like polyamory will be quite difficult to accept as a model and to manage. It doesn't mean they can't do it. It means it's more difficult. And so it's possible that they will embrace it as a way of actually growing and coming into themselves and learning to self-regulate and to self-soothe and to be responsible for their own needs. But it is a bigger ask. It is a bigger challenge than somebody who's already quite self-contained in that regard. Because just like it's unhealthy in a monogamous relationship to expect your partner to just validate you all the time and to feel like you're just nothing without them, which is a codependent relationship. The same thing can happen in polyamory, where you just date a lot of people to feel that lots of people love you and choose you, and therefore you're validated. That makes you valid, right?
Yeah.
And affirmed. And that's, again, not the right reason to go into polyamory.
Yeah. It kind of goes against the growth, which I feel sounds like it's really underpins polyamory, is this growing as an individual, because that way of still using lots of other people to validate you, right, actually stops you from growing. It stunts your growth. That's
right. Yeah. And I want to stress that there's nothing to stop people who are monogamous to also have that growth. It's not that polyamory somehow will get you to a higher plane of growth. No, it's just that for some people that is their path, because it's just something that they naturally connect with, and for others it's not. So whatever relationship dynamic you are going to choose, focusing on self-growth is really important, right?
Yeah. And it actually really brings on to the question that was coming up for me, actually, was like, what can monogamous people learn from like poly life and how polyamorous people run their relationships?
Well, communication skills. So being very clear about what it is that your needs are, what your boundaries are. I think that also be clear about encouraging your partner to do the same, right? So looking for that boundaries from your partner. So I think that is relevant and important in any relationship. But again, in polyamory, it's out there, it's right in front. I think that project management skills, maybe, is something that we can learn. Yeah. Excellent scheduling, kind of Google Calendar scheduling. Probably, I think just being kind of a good listener, giving space to people. So there's a lot in that space of like just relating that polyamory can really draw out in you, and yeah, being super authentic, because ultimately, you've got nothing to lose by being who you are, and if a partner isn't suitable for you, there are other partners. Now, what I talk sometimes to people who are single, who are looking for, who believe that feel polyamorous, but they can't even meet one person. So for them, this idea of managing multiple relationships is just a theory, just a pipe dream. It's a theory. It's in the clouds. They just want a relationship. And but I still think that learning the skills that people employ in polyamory, how to talk to people, how to communicate who you are, how to actually know what your boundaries are and kind of and and define that is going to prepare them for any relationship. Prepare them to meet somebody who will definitely get along with them, that they can click, not just someone who they want to be with because they look good or because they have a certain intellect or there's certain common interest. Right? So even people who are single, it's good to learn these communication techniques, I believe.
Yeah, definitely. It's something that I come across a lot in my work is around the communication of one's own authenticity. Like, who are you? And one of the things I see often when I work with a man who's in a relationship is that he's got into a relationship off the back of not being completely authentic about who he is. And he now has to then kind of start to express that authenticity in the relationship and somehow try and also keep that together. And it's actually very tricky to do, because you want to stay true to your authenticity, because that will actually have your relationship last over the long term. But one has to also accept that your partner may decide that that's not the person who they want to be with, and you must be okay with that. And it sounds like from a polyamorous point of view, there's a lot more of acceptance of, okay, when I am who I am, there will be people who don't want to be with me, and that is okay.
Yes. And also, when I am who I am, there will be people who will want to be with me until they don't, and that is okay. Because one of the misconceptions, specifically in monogamy, is that a relationship is only successful if it lasts a lifetime. And I'm looking for that one relationship that I will stay with, and that's it. Right? And because we change and our partner changes, then it's not necessarily a realistic expectation to have. And while there are relationships that grow together and they're beautiful and last a lifetime, that doesn't mean that they're any better or worse than good, healthy, communicative, kind of honest relationships that last a year or 5 years or 6 months, right? So I think polyamory taught me that the measure of a good relationship is, do I feel nurtured and nourished by it? And oftentimes in monogamy, when we end a relationship, it's a hard stop. We never see that person again. They're out of our life. In polyamory, that doesn't happen so much. We tend to just transition to a different kind of relationship. And a lot of friends that I have now, good friends, we dated at some point. Maybe we tried to have a relationship, realized, you know what, it was fun for a few weeks or a few months, but it ran its course. But we still cared for each other because we clearly shared something important, kind of intimate together for a reason. And that part of the friendship I don't want to lose. So, and I don't have to, because my other partners don't mind who else I'm seeing, right? And I'm not going to get any kind of call from another partner saying, I don't want you to see this person. That doesn't happen. So so you can transition to a friendship. And I really love that about this dynamic, is that people who I care about, I don't have to let go of and like lose in my life because of some imposed expectation of society that you got to move on to your next relationship, right? And even if something lasted a few months, as long as I can think back and feel, yeah, it was good, I was nourished, we both added value to each other, that is a good relationship.
Yeah. I totally agree. It's a really beautiful definition of a successful relationship, feeling nourished, because like you said, society has this idea that a good relationship is one that lasts forever. And I've come to realize that actually doesn't mean it's successful, because there's plenty of people in very unhappy relationships that have lasted a very long time. The length of a relationship is not a measure of its success.
No, that's right.
Yeah. So it's like, does the relationship give you, what you need? Do you feel happy? Do you feel content? Do you feel nourished? Does it, it's all those real things, actually. Those are the real important things we should be looking at.
Yeah. And you could wake up one day and feel upset and frustrated because your partner did something annoying, right? And you may be unhappy at that moment. And that's fine too, right? You don't measure a relationship because of on that. It's more about, am I free to grow as a person? Am I allowed to be my authentic self? Can I express that to my partner? I would love if all relationships, monogamous or not, or non-monogamous, are at a point where I can tell my partner anything, And just sharing my feelings and my thoughts isn't going to destabilize the relationship. Because even if I'm monogamous, but I am feeling attraction to somebody else, that is just a feeling. It doesn't mean I'm going to act on it. But why can't I talk to my partner about it, right? And why can't she be happy for me that I have this urge, right? I'm not acting on it. I don't think my partner is any less because I had this attraction. It's just a natural human response a lot of the times. But when we make it a taboo, we make it a topic that people should talk about. You add to it a lot of negative way that just doesn't need to be there.
It's a very difficult one in society, that one, just expressing desire for another person, because we always make it an equal. If I express desire for this person over here who's not my partner, that means I don't have desire for my partner, or there's something wrong in this direction. It's always that's the assumption, isn't it? That's a societal assumption inside of monogamy.
Yeah, I mean, I'm hoping that the kind of mainstreaming of polyamory, all the media coverage that we're having now, and newspaper articles and social media, if it does one thing, it maybe just normalizes that it's okay to feel attraction or emotional connection with more than one person. That doesn't necessarily have to destabilize a monogamous relationship at all, right? It's more just acknowledging that that humans are multisexual beings, as in, even if you're monogamous, you don't have just one relationship all your life, which means at one point you're into somebody else, and now you're into somebody else. So that's just normal. Yeah, and because when somebody hears that their partner has an attraction to someone, because of the social kind of brainwashing, really, the first thing they think of, oh, now they will like them and stop liking me, right? Or this person has all these things that I don't have, because if I did, they wouldn't do that. They wouldn't go and fancy someone else. And that's simply false.
Yeah.
That's simply false. There's plenty of research to indicate that, both in terms of familiarity and routine that often lowers the excitement levels with, in existing established relationships, or something new, brand new, even if objectively, even though there's no objectivity there, might be hotter or whatever. Even if your partner is objectively hotter, the new person is going to feel like that just because they're brand new and you've not had any experience with them. But that's just normal and natural. And it's how we don't have control over it. It's how our minds work. So getting that more normalized will definitely take away a lot of pain that people feel like they should experience because it's like wrong, according to society. And this whole idea around jealousy often is predicated on these social norms that we just learn to accept and expect from our partner, to be faithful and to never look at anybody else. So some of the jealousy that people experience is really an outcome of being socialized to expect this fidelity and loyalty and exclusivity. So of course, if something that happens that is different from that, I'm going to experience a shock of oh, but I thought that you only had eyes for me. And that comes up as anger, as jealousy, and and that can obviously manifest as sadness or rage or depression in different ways for different people, often depending on what else is going on with them, what other insecurities and fears they're experiencing. Because that jealousy is just a trigger for something deeper that they already have inside them, as we alluded to earlier. Now, so by unlearning and deprogramming from the toxic monogamy kind of myths that we talk about, that doesn't mean you have to become polyamorous. It just means that you can start practicing conscious, healthy monogamy as or any relationship dynamic. There's deeper jealousy that also is experienced because of trauma, and it can be compounded by the expectations, but it's also much deeper in the body because it's based on a deep fear of abandonment or of past abuse and emotional or physical. And that's where just unlearning cognitive patterns isn't going to help. And that's what, and it's important to recognize that that's going on and seek proper therapy.
Mm.
And when it's very deeply ingrained in the body, and I'm talking about more serious trauma where our mind tried to forget it, so we kind of erased it from our memories, but their body still remembers it. And that's when the work, the therapy involves somatic practices and as well, to be able to regulate the body to the point where you actually can express your emotions, can really feel them, and then start making sense of them. So it's a process. And polyamory, oftentimes when people jump into it without a lot of preparation and without coaching and without or with other people who are new, where everybody's new in the experience, and they're just doing it because they like each other and they know it's a thing and they want to try it. I mean, that's fine, but it's important to realize that a lot of these insecurities you never knew you had, and it's only when you're practicing this model where the person you love starts having feelings for another person, and you agree that it's okay, and then your mind and your body and your emotions are in conflict because they're saying different things, right? My mind is like, yeah, it's fine, but my body's like, no, she's mine, I'm gonna lose her. And for a lot of people, it's something that they've never had to deal with it before in monogamy. So it's a new experience. It can be shocking. It can be very destabilizing. It can make you also feel guilty, especially if you're, again, logically really believe that you're doing the right thing. So you're feeling guilt and shame about not giving your partner this support, right? That you really want to give them.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's can be a big shock and realization. And when it works well is when that shock makes you realize that it's something to work on. Okay, now I need help. Now I'm going to see a professional. I'm going to work on these anxieties. I'm not going to make it my partner's problem. I will take ownership of that.
Yeah. Take self-responsibility and, maybe going to something like somatic experiencing, maybe this massage, breath work, the list goes on for somatic therapies.
That's right.
Wow. Yeah, because I think there's a whole other topic, right, around the way the body holds trauma that our mind either has no knowledge of, or that we are in conflict, like you said. Like that's a really big one for a lot of us. I don't know if it's something that's coming through, but I think it's definitely something that is being talked about a lot more now, is this idea that we need to look at the trauma that our body holds.
Very much so, yeah. So I run a 5-week course, which is a small group course, where we eventually get to that, but we get to it by first understanding over the workshops that we are an individual, that we have the ability to understand and define our needs and our boundaries, and then we then take that and see how does that fit in with other people's needs and boundaries, and what's the communication that we need to do to make that they both work, respect each other, recognize each other's needs and boundaries, and then what happens when it doesn't work, when there's these triggers, right? And then what happens in our mind with all this kind of social inputs and narrative that we grew up with, what happens in our emotions, and what happens in our body. And there's different types of treatments and therapies to work with each of these kind of segments. So it's important for us to recognize what it is.
Yeah.
And as a coach, for example, if people come to me with issues of jealousy, I can work through the first part. I can work in some cases with the second part of the emotions. When it comes to the body trauma, that's really important to have a trained therapist, like a psychotherapist, that incorporate different modalities, including body kind of somatic work and talk therapy. There's a combination of those things and it's different for every person depending on how deep that issue is.
Yeah.
That's a different topic for a different podcast.
Yeah, definitely. I guess maybe it's a good place to finish up, actually. And as you mentioned just there, there's a course you're running. How can the listeners find you and find out a little bit more information about your course?
My website is called openrelating.love, and my Instagram is openrelating, where I post a lot of content about open relating and communication. A lot about non-monogamy, but not only. It's focused on relationships. And the course, there's one running right now. I'm in the middle of. The next installment will start in September, so people can already sign up to get on the waiting list. And basically we'll then announce the date of September that we start, and it runs for 5 weeks. But it's all available on openrelating.love. And then if people can also book a half-hour free session with me online to talk through their needs and whether this is the right course for them. And I will try to understand what is their journey and whether it works. Because for some people, one-to-one coaching really works well. For others, they benefit from the perspectives of other people in the group. You know, there's a lot of dynamic, which can be very beneficial.
Yeah, wonderful. And I'll be putting the details for the course in the show notes for listeners. They can find that.
Right.
But I definitely highly recommend listeners to go check out Roy on Instagram. Like his content, there's a lot of content about polyamory and open relating, but there's also a lot of content that is really about having what you described before, I think, was like healthy, conscious monogamy, where there's deep communication, openness, and honesty between partners and how to support that.
Yep.
Cool.
So.
Wow. Thank you, everyone. Roy's a wealth of knowledge and understanding and information. So thank you for joining me today. It's been great having you.
Thanks a lot for this time. I really enjoyed the discussion, and I hope that it will bring some more insights to your listeners.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, Roy. And thank you, listeners. Until next week. See you soon.